Part B of House Report 112-616 by the gentlewoman from New York, Mrs. Maloney, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevail by voice vote. Clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 21, printed in Part B of House Report number 112-616, offered by Mrs. Maloney of New York.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having arisen. A recorded vote is ordered. Members record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote.
The underlying bill prevents the government from issuing new regulations costing more than $100 million for 2 years, or until the unemployment rate drops to 6% or less. Carolyn Maloney, Democrat of New York, who has an amendment which would delay the implementation of the bill and the provisions relating to the Securities and Exchange Commission.
On this vote, the ayes are 171, the nays. On this vote, the ayes are 173, the nays are 243, less than a majority voting in the affirmative. The amendment is not agreed to. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on amendment number 25, printed in Part B of House Report 112-616 by the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Posey, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the ayes prevail by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 25, printed in Part B of House Report number 112-616, offered by Mr. Posey of Florida.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having arisen. A recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote.
And it's the last amendment vote on the deregulation bill, this one dealing with limiting regulations of foreign bank accounts.
On this vote, the yeas are 251.
Mrs. Capps. Mrs. Capps votes no.
On this vote, the yeas are 251, the nays are 165. The amendment is adopted. There being no further amendments under the rule, the committee rises. Mr. Speaker, the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union has had consideration H.R. 4078 and pursuant to House Resolution 738. I report the bill is amended by that resolution and House Resolution 741 back to the House with sundry further amendments adopted in the Committee of the Whole.
The Chairman of the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union reports that the committee has had under consideration the bill H.R. 4078 and pursuant to House Resolution 738 reports the bill as amended by that resolution and House Resolution 741 back to the House with sundry further amendments adopted in the Committee of the Whole. Under the rule, the previous question is ordered. Is a separate vote demanded on any further amendments reported in the Committee of the Whole? If not, the Chair will put them engrossed. The question is on adoption of the amendments. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question is on engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to provide that no agency may take any significant regulatory action until the unemployment rate is equal to or less than 6.0%.
House will be in order. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Ohio rise?
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
Is the gentlewoman opposed to the bill?
I am opposed in its current form.
Gentlewoman qualifies. Clerk will report the motion.
Ms. Sutton of Ohio moves to recommit the bill H.R. 4078 to the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform with instructions to report the same back to the House forthwith with the following amendments. Add at the end of the bill the following. Title 8, Miscellaneous, Section 801, Exemption for disclosure of offshore bank accounts, middle income tax relief, and protections for consumers. Notwithstanding any other provision of this Act, nothing in this Act or the amendments made by this Act shall impose any limitation on agency action that would, 1, require the disclosure of a foreign financial account, including a bank account, 2, implement tax cuts for middle-class American families, 3, protect against Asian carp and other invasive species, 4, ensure the safety of prescription drugs, or 5, provide foreclosure relief and curb predatory practices by bank and non-bank subprime lenders.
The gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes in support of her motion.
Mr. Speaker, at the outset, I want to be clear. This final amendment does not kill the underlying bill. It only improves it. So regardless of whether you intend to vote for the legislation or against it, you will have the opportunity to do so today. Mr. Speaker, in a little more than a week, we will be getting back to our districts for the August work period. Some of us will have the opportunity to sit down with seniors to talk about the issues that affect them. Some will visit job sites or national parks. But regardless of where you go, there are basic protections that ensure the safety and the security of the people you'll meet with. If you represent a district with a high foreclosure rate, there are common sense protections that stand between your constituents and predatory subprime lenders. If you represent a district that borders one of our Great Lakes, like I do, there are basic protections that aim to keep invasive species like Asian carp out of our Great Lakes. Protections that not only preserve and protect our natural species, but thousands of jobs and the futures of the people from Illinois to New York. If you represent a district that has even one senior, as we all do, There are critical protections to ensure that their prescription drugs are safe and that the care they get must be safe as well. In a week, we will all face our constituents who rely on these protections to stay safe, to stay healthy, and to hold on to their share of the American dream. What this motion to recommit does is it allows us to recommit ourselves to those essential protections for the people that we serve. It ensures that while the middle-class Americans who are paying their fair share and playing by the rules, that those at the very top can't simply hide their money away in foreign bank accounts, because those who do well in America should do well by America. It also ensures that we have protections we need to protect the financial futures of our middle-class families and cuts for them, for the middle-class families, those who really need it. It ensures that those protections that hold invasive species at bay while allowing future generations to enjoy America's environmental wonders will be upheld. It ensures that our prescription drugs for our mothers and fathers, our sons and daughters, and our grandchildren are safe, and that the home ownership is still the American dream, not a subprime nightmare. If you vote for this final amendment to the bill today, you will be able to honestly tell your constituents that you have voted to protect them, protect their families, and protect their futures. Mr. Speaker, the days left in this Congress are quickly coming to an end. What we have here is an opportunity to accomplish what our constituents sent us here to do nearly 2 years ago, to put politics aside and to put our neighbors first. For the good of our country, let us join together in this moment to pass these common sense protections. I encourage my colleagues to vote yes on this common sense, balanced, final amendment to the bill. Then we can immediately vote on final passage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady yields back the balance of her time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to this motion to recommit.
Is the gentleman opposed to the motion?
Yes.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 2011, we came to this House for one reason, and it was a motion to recommit. We recommitted to the people of the United States that we were going to change the way business was done in this town. This motion to recommit is a joke. This is ridiculous. Now let me tell you about what it's like to be in the real world and not inside the Beltway. I operate a business that my father started back in 1953 after being a parts picker in a General Motors warehouse, going to fight the war and coming back home. I called our body shop manager today, Jason Scholes. He's been with me for 26 years. And I said to Jason, I need to know the cost of tape, Jason. He goes, what are you talking about, Mike? I said, in our body shop, when people wreck their car and bring their car, and I know we have to use a lot of tape. He says, oh my goodness, has the cost of tape gone crazy? He said, we use 2 types of tape, Mike. We use green tape. Green tape is the tape we use when we have to use water on a job, and we have to make sure that tape sticks. He said, that's up to $4 a roll. I said, tell me about the other tape. He said, well, the other tape is yellow tape. I said, yellow tape, tell me what the yellow tape does. He said, that's when we're going to paint a car and we don't have to use the green tape. The yellow tape's a little less expensive. It's only $2 a roll. He said, but Mike, I got to tell you, we're spending $160 a month on tape, and it's really starting to make me wonder about whether I'm doing the right thing. I said, so Jason, we're spending about $2,000 a year on green and yellow tape. He said, yes, we are. I said, Jason, you know what the cost of red tape is? He goes, I have no idea. We don't use red tape. I said, oh, yes, we do. It's $1.75 trillion. That's the cost of red tape. And I called my friend Don Shamey at Next Tier Bank, and I said, Don, we've known each other since we were kids. Our wives know each other. Our kids grew up together. We do a lot of things together. I've done business with you for 40 years. You're right across the street from me. Don, tell me about the new regulations. He said, well, Mike, if you take a look at it, there's 1,100 pages now that are the definition of whether you're a qualified borrower or not. I said, it only took 1,100 pages for the government to determine what the definition is of a qualified borrower. Are you kidding me? Do you mean to sit here and say that you are serious? We renovated a ballpark in my hometown. A guy named Tom Bernatowski, veteran. took us a couple $1 million to renovate our ballpark. The day we were going to open up, I got a call at the dealership and said, Mike, would you come down? I said, why? What's going on? He said, we're having trouble with the occupancy permit. So I went down to see. I said, so what's the problem? He said, well, here, come in the men's room. Let me show you what the problem is. I said, we have 1,500 people who want to come see the opening ball game. They say, yeah, but we've got a major problem. You see, the mirrors in the restroom are 1/4 of an inch too low. So you can't possibly open that ballpark. So you want to know the price of regulation? You want to talk about the thousands and thousands of pages that we put on the backs of the job creators? You want to talk about creating jobs in America? When you want to see a nation that doesn't want to participate but wants to dominate in the world market, then let them rise. Take the heavy boot off the throat of America's job creators and let them breathe. The jobs we are talking about are not red jobs or blue jobs. They are red, white, and blue jobs. They are not Democrat jobs or Republican jobs or independent jobs or libertarian jobs. They are American jobs. If you want this country to thrive and not just survive, then please start playing the game by the rules and stop this ridiculous mockery of what it is that we do here in this town. We are so out of touch with the American people, and you know what all this does? It adds layer after layer after layer of cost. And that cost is ultimately paid for by the American consumer. You want to have more revenues? Then let the tide rise for all boats. Let us be able to not only survive, but to thrive. I urge all my colleagues on both sides now, this is not a left or right issue. This is an American issue. I urge you to rise today and vote for H.R. 4078. Let's let America get back to work. And with that, I yield back.
Without objection, the previous question is ordered on the motion to recommit. The question is on the motion to recommit. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Mr. Speaker, on
Gentleman
behalf
from
of
Ohio.
middle-class tax cuts, I ask for the ayes and nays.
The ayes and nays requested. The ayes and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the ayes and nays will rise. Sufficient number having arisen. Recorded vote is ordered. Members record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 15-minute vote. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, the Chair will reduce to 5 minutes the minimum time for any electronic vote on the question of passage.
The underlying legislation prevents federal agencies from writing or issuing new regulations costing more than $100 million for 2 years or until the unemployment rate drops to 6% or less. Democrats offering a motion to recommit, a last chance to change the bill offered by Representative Betty Sutton of Ohio, which would prohibit from the underlying bill a number of limitations in areas of foreign financial accounts. It would, from implementing tax cuts for middle-class Americans and a number of other issues. This is a 15-minute vote, a last chance to change the bill before final passage. Well, today, both Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi and Speaker John Boehner had their weekly press briefings. In his briefing, Speaker Boehner talked about next week's vote on the extension of the Bush tax cuts, the Senate yesterday passing the Democratic proposal. The Speaker also talked about the drought in the Midwest and other areas and possible rising food prices. We'll show you his briefing as this vote continues.
Morning, everyone. You know, by the end of next week, the House, and only the House, will have acted to address the tax hikes that threaten our economy and the defense cuts that threaten our security. That's because only Republicans have offered plans to address these threats. Yet it was the President who came up with the sequester because he didn't want the debt limit to get in the way of his campaign. Now these arbitrary cuts are looming, and frankly, he's nowhere to be found on the issue. And it was the President's proposed tax hike because he thinks if you run a small business, you didn't build it. the government did. And since he thinks the private sector and small businesses are doing fine, he believes it won't hurt to raise their taxes. Now the president's off campaigning, trying to tell everyone who will listen that he didn't really mean what he said, that he didn't really mean you didn't build that. Well, Mr. President, I'll tell you what. If you want to show that you stand with American small business owners, the best thing you can do is drop your plan to increase their taxes on January the 1st. This small business tax hike, according to Frost and Jacobs, to Ernst & Young, will destroy more than 700,000 jobs. And next week, the House will vote to stop the small business tax hike. We'll also vote to start a pro-growth tax reform that will help employers keep jobs in America and bring some jobs back to America that have gone overseas. And lastly, we'll give the Democrats an opportunity to vote for the president's small business tax hikes. And if they do, I think the American people will hold them accountable. In addition to stopping this tax hike, we should also come together to address the threat from these arbitrary defense cuts. And while we're at it, we should get over to the president's desk the more than 30 jobs bills that the House has passed in a bipartisan manner that sit in the United States Senate. The president may be checked out to the point that he hasn't been able to meet with his jobs council. But the American people are continuing to ask the question, where are the jobs? And they expect us to work on this no matter where we are in the campaign or what time of the year it is. The House is going to continue to focus on the issue of most concern to the American people, and that's the economy and jobs.
Mr. Speaker, will you allow a House vote on the Senate-passed tax bill?
If our Democrat colleagues want to offer the president's plan or the Senate Democrat plan, we're more than happy to give them a vote.
So you will allow a vote on that plan?
There's a report.
You say you will allow a vote on the Senate-passed bill?
We'll see what they'll offer in the Rules Committee, but it's our belief that they ought to be able to have the vote.
Mr. Speaker.
Whoa. Remember, just raise your hand.
Speaker Boehner, with two-thirds of the country, contiguous area of the country now in drought, probably most of the corn and soybean crop rated poor to very poor, and food prices expected to rise to at least 4% next year. Do you plan at this point to allow some kind of drought package, particularly for the livestock producers? I know last week you mentioned crop producers, but the programs for the livestock producers ran out last year. Do you plan to allow some kind of drought package on the floor, either as part of a farm bill or as part of an extension to the farm bill, or is it?
Well, I do believe that the House will address the livestock disaster program that unfortunately in the last farm bill was only authorized for 4 years. And we're continuing to work with Chairman Lucas and the members of the committee on an appropriate path forward.
As part of a farm bill or an extension?
Speaker Boehner, the President said last night that he thinks most gun owners would agree that AK-47s belong in the hands of soldiers, not in the hands of criminals. And he said that he's going to work on a consensus in terms of making sure there are better background checks and whatnot. You said you were following the President's lead earlier this week. Do you agree with him now, and would you be willing to be part of that conversation?
Well, AK-47s, all right, are not allowed to be in the hands of criminals. That is the law. And if the President has proposals on other ways that we can address criminals owning guns, I'll be happy to look at them.
Mr. Speaker, can I follow up on that?
Whoa.
Speaker Boehner, given the scale of issues the country faces with the sequester and the tax issues, have you made any personal effort to contact President Obama?
I have not. My office is always wide open. But listen, he hasn't had time to meet with his jobs council in the last 6 months. I'm not surprised he hadn't had time to call me. No.
Speaker Boehner, to follow up on the gun issue, do you think that the nation's gun laws, as they stand now, are adequate, or do you think the House needs to consider new legislation?
No, I think that what's appropriate at this point is look at all the laws that we already have on the books to make sure that they're working as they were intended to work. Are they being enforced the way they were intended to be enforced? And that would be the most logical step forward at this point.
Mr. Speaker, Leader Pelosi has written you a letter asking for a bipartisan working group to begin work before the House goes on recess in early August. Are you going to wait on OMB to present the President's alternative proposal, or are you ready with regards to the sequestration?
I think it's important for the Office of Management and Budget to outline to the Congress and to the American people how they intend to enforce the sequester and where these reductions in spending are going to come from. It's the fair thing to do for the American people, and I think clearly Congress has a right to know.
Speaker, do you plan on putting Russia, a vote to grant Russia permanent normal trade relations on the floor next week, or would you do that under suspension?
We've got a pretty busy week next week, and as I said last week, if the President really thinks this is an important issue that we have to deal with, then maybe he ought to be out there making the case for it. I haven't seen that as yet.
In whatever legislation funds the government past September 30th, will the House Republicans permit or not permit funding for the regulation requiring all health care plans to cover sterilizations, contraceptives, and abortion-inducing drugs?
I had a conversation about what would be included in the CR, so when we have something to announce, we'll let you know.
Along those lines, next week is the plan to actually require health care plans to include contraceptives goes into effect. You said last year that you guys were going to introduce legislation to address that. It never came up. What do you guys plan on doing in terms of that?
We're continuing to work with those groups around the country who believe that their religious liberties are being infringed to try to come to a resolution of this issue. Sometimes resolving these issues can sometimes be best be done other than legislative avenues. So we're continuing to work with them on the best way forward.
No legislation.
Sure. Are you considering a 6-month stopgap bill for punching everything up for next year?
We're considering lots of things when it comes to the CO.
Why are you considering
but we
that?
don't really have anything to announce at this point. So I'm not going to say much more about it.
What would you say to voters, though, who already feel that Congress is a do-nothing Congress?
We're going to come to an agreement, I would hope, with our colleagues in the Senate to try to make sure that the government's funded, that there's no opportunities for games to be played. And when we come to when we have something to announce, we'll be happy to do it. Last one.
Last night, the President suggested that there can be some strengthening for the gun laws regarding background checks. You talked earlier about looking at enforcing the law. Do you think there's room to strengthen background check laws?
I don't know. I'm not the expert on this, but if the President's got ideas, I'd be happy to look at them. Thanks.
Thank you.
Speaker Bander's briefing from just a short while ago. Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi also had her weekly press conference. And you find both of those shortly in our video library at cspan.org. The House is wrapping up work for the week. This is the Democratic motion to recommit, the last chance to change the bill before they move on to final passage. The bill would prevent federal agencies from issuing new regulations that would cost more than $100 million for 2 years or until the unemployment rate drops to 6% or less. This is a 15-minute vote. Final passage vote is next, and that will be a 5-minute vote. The Senate is in today. They're talking about cybersecurity, considering the motion to proceed on that. Congressional Quarterly reported this morning that a group of senators met today to discuss the legislation, but departed without resolving some of the key sticking points.
The ayes are 171. The nays are 232. On this vote, the ayes are 171.
Mr. George Miller of California. Mr. George Miller of California votes aye. Mr. Brown of Georgia. Mr. Brown of Georgia votes no. Ms. Pelosi. Ms. Pelosi votes aye. Ms. Castor. Ms. Castor of Florida votes aye. Mr. Ellison. Mr. Ellison votes aye.
On this vote, the ayes are 181, the nays 234. Less than majority voting affirmative. The motion is not adopted. The question is on passage of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Committee Chair, the ayes have it.
Request a recorded vote.
Recorded vote is requested. Those favoring recorded vote will rise. Sufficient number having arisen. Recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
And it should be the last recorded vote of the week. This is final passage on a bill which would freeze federal agencies from issuing regulations until the unemployment rate drops below 6% or less. Regulations costing more than $100 million for 2 years or until that unemployment rate drops. It's a 5-minute vote.
On this vote, the ayes are 244, the nays.
Mr. Hurt. Mr. Hurt votes aye. Mr. Moran. Mr. Moran votes no. Mr. Frank of Massachusetts. Mr. Frank of Massachusetts votes no.
On this vote, the ayes are 205, the nays are 172, a majority voting in the affirmative. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Washington seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that I may hereafter be considered as the first sponsor of H.R. 3703, a bill originally introduced by Representative Inslee of Washington for the purposes of adding co-sponsors and requesting reprintings pursuant to Clause 7 of Rule 12.
Without objection.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I ask consent to speak out of order for 1 minute for the purposes of inquiring of the Majority Leader the schedule for the coming week.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield to my friend, the Majority Leader.
I thank the gentleman from Maryland, the Democratic whip, for yielding. Mr. Speaker, on Monday, the House will meet in pro forma session, but no votes are expected. On Tuesday, the House will meet at noon for morning hour and 2 p.m. for legislative business. Votes will be postponed until 6:30 p.m. On Wednesday and Thursday, the House will meet at 10 a.m. for morning hour and noon for legislative business. On Friday, the House will meet at 9 a.m. for legislative business. Last votes of the week are expected no later than 3 p.m. Mr. Speaker, the House will consider a number of
Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
House will be in order. Members at the back of the chamber, please remove your conversations from the chamber. Members in the back of the chamber, please remove your conversations from the chamber. Gentleman from Virginia.
Mr. Speaker, the House will consider a number of suspensions on Tuesday and Wednesday, a complete list of which will be announced by the close of business tomorrow. In addition, the House will consider 2 bills under rule to stop the tax hikes and provide for a comprehensive tax reform. H.R. 8, the Job Protection and Recession Prevention Act, sponsored by Chairman Dave Camp, and H.R. 6169, the Pathway to Job Creation through a Simpler, Fairer Tax Code Act, sponsored by Chairman David Dreyer. Together, these bills will ensure that no American faces a tax hike on January 1st, while providing our small businessmen and women with the certainty to grow and create jobs. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the House may consider legislation related to programs and disaster assistance under the expiring Farm Bill legislation. I thank the gentleman and yield back.
I thank the gentleman for that information. As the gentleman knows, he was unable to have the colloquy last week, and so Mr. Roscom and I talked about the schedule. And last week, the Chief Deputy Majority Whip mentioned that we would be voting on the tax bill, as you have done. And he also mentioned that we would be given the opportunity to offer a substitute amendment on the floor of our choosing. And that's still the plan of the majority, so that we'll be able to offer that legislation. I yield, my friend.
Mr. Speaker, I didn't understand the gentleman's questions. If he could repeat the question.
My question is, last week we had a colloquy, and Mr. Roscom indicated that we would be able to offer an amendment, not just an MTR, and we discussed that, but an amendment to the bill. Now, we weren't precise whether it was in the form of a substitute or an amendment, but in either event, I'm asking Mr. Majority Leader whether that is still the case, and whether or not such amendment will be obviously protected under the rule for such waivers as may be necessary for the piece of legislation that Mr. Roskin referred to.
Again, without having been privy to the conversation between the gentleman from Illinois and my friend from Maryland, I can say that the minority will be afforded the opportunity to offer the President's tax plan, not just as a motion to recommit, but certainly as a standalone amendment as well.
Now, let me be more precise then, because I'm not sure whether or not the definition of the President's plan in his weekly press conference just a few hours ago, or maybe just a few minutes ago, Mr. Boehner was asked if we would be allowed to vote on the Senate tax bill, to which he responded, if our Democratic colleagues want to offer the President's plan in the Senate, then we are more than happy to give them a vote. Now, he said that just a few minutes ago. Our intention will probably be to offer the bill that has now passed the Senate, which will protect middle-class taxpayers from any tax increase, as I think your party, Mr. Leader, and my party agree on. Mr. Speaker, I would hope that we would be able to offer that alternative on the floor with such protections as would be necessary, consistent with what Speaker Boehner has said. I yield to my friend.
I'd say back, Mr. Speaker, I'd say back to the gentleman again that it is our intention to allow the minority to offer as a motion to recommit or as a standalone amendment the President's plan. Obviously, we'll have to see what is being offered, but that is the intention consistent with the Speaker's remarks publicly today.
Mr. Speaker, I would hope that we would not parse words, Mr. Leader. We have had some discussions on this in the majority party. When it was the minority party running for office, said we're going to have open, full debate. Mr. Boehner has said in the Pledge to America that that's what you wanted to do. Now, you keep parsing your words. I will tell you the President's plan. The President's plan currently is the bill that passed the Senate just a few hours ago yesterday. That's the President's plan, I tell my friend. If, in fact, Mr. Boehner's words are to be interpreted as something other than that, he says, if our Democratic colleagues want to offer the President's plan in the Senate. Now, obviously, we can't offer a plan in the Senate. We're House members. So my presumption is, Mr. Leader, that means if we want to offer the Senate plan, which is now the President's plan, I tell my friend, we're more than happy to give them a vote. I hope that's accurate. I hope that we can have a full and open debate on that issue. But I hope that the Republicans' side of the aisle, Mr. Speaker, does not choose the amendment that we are to offer. Let us choose it, I tell my friend. And I would hope that we could clarify that so that we would know, and the American people would know, that we have a plan now passed by the Senate. And we have a plan also that was defeated in the United States Senate. I don't know whether your side intends to offer exactly the plan that was defeated in the United States Senate, but it is a plan that the President of the United States, as the leader knows, has said he won't sign. So what I ask my friend respectfully, so that we know what to prepare for, and we know that it will be made in order, that consistent with what the clear meaning of this statement that Mr. Boehner made just a few hours ago is that we would be given the opportunity to offer the Senate-passed plan and would have a vote on that plan, either in the form of an amendment or a substitute. And I yield to my friend.
Mr. Speaker, I would say back to the gentleman, we do expect, and our intention is, to allow your tax hike to be made in order. I mean, I don't understand, Mr. Speaker, how many more times I have to say that. The Speaker has always represented that we were going to work towards an open process. And I would remind the gentleman that when his party was last in the majority and considered an the extension of expiring rates in 2010, that his party made in order just one amendment to H.R. 4853 for their own member, Mr. Levin, not for the Republicans, because we were not offered a single amendment. We weren't even offered a motion to recommit. And in fact, the Pelosi-led Congress denied us a motion to recommit on 47 separate occasions. So I would say to the gentleman again, the Speaker has been consistent throughout. We intend to continue to strive towards an open process. We intend to offer you a motion to recommit, a standalone amendment, if you want to offer a tax hike twice. That is our intention. Yes, Mr. Speaker.
I thank the gentleman, and I will interpret that, Mr. Speaker, as indicating that if we choose to offer as an amendment the bill that passed the Senate, which ensures that there will be no tax increase on 98% of Americans, that we will be allowed to offer that bill, and it will be protected under the rule, and such waivers as are necessary will be extended. That's how I interpret that. If I am wrong, perhaps the majority leader can correct me, but I don't want to parse words or lead to confusion. The gentleman knows what the Senate bill is. I know what the Senate bill is, and it is at this point in time our intention to offer that Senate bill as an amendment to the bill that's offered on this floor. So I would hope that our understanding is that, consistent again as, and I want to say, consistent with the Speaker's comments, that will be allowed. I want to say to the gentleman as well, I think he's appropriate in referencing the past, and I'm pleased that he's not following such precedents.
I appreciate that, Mr. Speaker. I'd say to the gentleman, thank you for that note. You know, I know the gentleman is continuing to express his support for the President's plan. As the gentleman knows, our colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle in the Senate feel as strongly as we do over here in the House that the President's tax plan, as was demonstrated recently by a nonpartisan study, will cost the economy over 700,000 jobs. It will reduce economic output. The gentleman knows our position on that, and we intend to, again, allow for that vote to occur and look forward to a robust debate that will ensue. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. I think that clarifies it, and he and I both look forward to that robust debate. We'll clearly differ, Mr. Speaker, on the impact of that vote. But there will be no dispute that it will ensure that 98% of Americans, every working family, 100%, will not pay any additional taxes on the first $200,000 or $250,000 of their income, which we think gives confidence to people, give confidence to the economy, and we think is an appropriate step to take. So I appreciate and look forward to that debate, which I think is an important one for the American people. I would also like to ask the gentleman, with respect to the Farm Bill, he mentions in his comments that there may be some vote on the Farm Bill. The Senate passed a bipartisan Farm Bill, as the gentleman knows. It saves very substantial monies, will contribute to a reduction of the deficit. Can the gentleman tell me whether or not the House-passed Farm Bill will be brought to the floor, or whether some alternative will be brought to the floor? And I yield to my friend.
Mr. Speaker, I'd say to the gentleman that we're continuing to work with Chairman Lucas and our members to determine the best way forward. I would say to the gentleman that the Senate bill he refers to does not have a majority of support in the House, and actually would ask the gentleman if he would respond to the question whether he supports the House Farm Bill. And I yield. Yield back.
I do not support the House Farm Bill, but
well, if
my committee, the committee that we don't have a chairman of the House Agriculture Committee, as the gentleman knows, but as he knows, the ranking Democrat does support that Farm Bill, and so it has, as the gentleman likes to observe on many occasions, it does have bipartisan support. He asked for my personal opinion, and Mr. Speaker, I've given him my personal opinion, but That bill itself will save substantial dollars and bring down the deficit. Not as much as the Senate bill, but it will have a positive effect on the deficit itself. In either event, however, we have some real distress in farm country, very substantial drought, in great need of making sure that there is some way to assist those farmers who are, through no fault of their own, but through the fault or the result of weather conditions, lack of rain, are in distress. So that we believe that something ought to be brought to the floor that will, A, not exacerbate the deficit, and B, help the farmer. I yield to my friend if he has any additional.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I would say to the gentleman, I'm glad to hear that the gentleman would like to support an effort to address the need for drought assistance and perhaps other programs that have or will expire, and look forward to perhaps his support, that if that's where we end up next week, allowing for that vote to occur and along with his support.
I thank the gentleman, and hopefully we can agree on how to do that, again, without making the deficit